We believe that videos, images, words, and sounds have the absolute power to inform, inspire, and entertain. We are united under the virtues of safety and knowledge. We are a training community of learners and teachers who encourage and energize each other to achieve greatness. We are pilots, videographers, photographers, freelancers, business owners, enthusiasts, experts, and apprentices. We are creators. We are the Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another awesome episode of Ask Drone U. My name is Paul.
And I'm Rob, and you're listening to episode number 329. Thank you very much for spending a few minutes of your day with us. We really appreciate it.
We definitely do. We appreciate the reviews, the comments, and everything we're seeing on Instagram and
the
Facebook.
Questions. We love the questions.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, I was posting about the new Phantom 4 that we got here, and wow, a lot of people want to know things about that Phantom 4. I'm very excited to be adding that to the Don't Crash course. If you guys are wondering, the Don't Crash course will include Phantom 4 here soon.
Very soon, yeah.
Very soon. So very excited about that.
Absolutely. It's a necessity. I mean, I think that's where all the focus is, right? Is on the Phantom 4 right now.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people too are wondering, should I really get the Phantom 4? Is the glass that much better on it? Is it really worth it? How much can it really see and avoid? And so I think it'll be a fun test. I got to be careful with this though.
Well, and I will tell you guys, if you haven't checked out Instagram, you should. But there were a lot of really good questions posed there, things that were creative and people were really thinking about what they're looking for.
Well, I like the fact that we're going to have 120 slow-mo from the sky. I'm really excited about that.
Cool.
So that'll
Can't wait to see what you guys do with that.
Definitely. Well, we should probably get to today's question, which is brought to you by... Are you a drone pilot? Are you operating under a Section 333 exemption? Then you may be familiar with Item 27, which requires you to get a property release for every flight over property.
Legal Flyer is an app for iPhone and iPad that helps you create professional property releases in less time than it takes to do a pre-flight check.
You can add your pilot info, you can sign in, hand it to the property owner for their signature. But wait a second. Legal Flyer's advanced integration automatically adds latitude, longitude, and even altitude.
Then add a panorama straight from the app. Everything drops into a single-page PDF you can share with a single tap. It's compliance at light speed. Visit LegalFlyer.com for more information or get it straight from the App Store. Legal Flyer. Property releases for professional drone pilots.
Hey guys, my name is Tom O'Brien. I'm just getting started into the aerial videography using UAVs, quadcopters. I got my paperwork filed with the FAA for the 333 exemption. I'm lined up with a local flight school, which I'll pursue further down the road if and when I get accepted for the 333. But right now, I'm just spending a lot of time flying around my property, practicing my video angles, and lately I've been spending a lot of time doing video editing. And that's where my question lies, was with the video editing software. I've started out with some basic ones as far as, I don't know if I can mention them, but I will. It's Windows Movie Maker. I've pretty much outgrown that. I've moved on to Filmora. I've outgrown that. And now I'm looking at Adobe. Is that the way to go? The Adobe Creative Cloud. That's where my question lies. What is the best software to get the most experience out of that we can grow into?
Anyways, Tom, thank you very much for the question. It's a good question, and we know that as the industry continues to move forward and more people are finding that they love this, they love flying, and they kind of want to see what opportunities are there for me out there.
Yeah, they love being creative as well.
They love being creative.
Telling stories. And one thing I will say is when you get started out with editing videos, it is a really long learning curve. It took me 8, 9, 10, 15, 20, 25 hours to edit 2 minutes of video. And then now I can edit 2 minutes of video in about 2 hours. I know the standard is probably an hour of editing for every finished minute of footage. That's when you get really good. But no matter what program he chooses, if he chooses to go the Adobe suite, or if maybe he chooses to go FCPX, or maybe he chooses to go Avid, those are kind of the three landmark really editing softwares. Whichever route he goes, there's going to be a time commitment. There's going to be a learning curve. So the decision that he's making right now is actually very important. Which way do I want to go?
Because what you're saying is once you learn one, they're different enough that on some level you'd be starting over if you started with a new one.
Oh yeah. Look, here's
not,
the example.
Not at the very beginning, but you'd be going backwards quite a bit.
Oh yeah, totally. Here's the example. I know Photoshop really, really well. I don't know Aperture. That's pretty much Apple's version of Photoshop. I don't know Aperture that well.
Okay.
So whenever I'm on my laptop, before I downloaded the Creative Cloud, I was using Aperture, and I could just never get the photos right where I wanted them, just because I knew Photoshop so well. But on the flip side of that, I've gotten to know Final Cut Pro so well. And I mean, I still learn things about Final Cut Pro, and I've been using it for 3 years.
Right.
I still learn things all the time, like how I can actually sort all of my clips by the favorited clips or marked clips that I make, instead of looking at all of the available clips. You know, that's something, I know that sounds simple, but even just a few weeks ago, my friend was like, why don't you just go through your footage like you always do and just click the F key after you put I and O. And I'm like, oh, well, why would you do that? He goes, marks it as a favorite. Then you go to the top of that library box and click See Favorites Only. And now you have all the selected clips that you've already chosen organized for you.
Kind of like your own playlist of sorts.
Yeah, kind of timestamps of footage that I want to watch. Now, that being said, Final Cut Pro is a great Apple product. Are people using Adobe Premiere Pro more? Yes, I think so.
Why is that?
There are so many plugins that work with Premiere Pro. Adobe, in my opinion, I think has been around a little bit longer than Final Cut Pro has. Adobe also has a suite of products that work together with Premiere Pro.
So they complement each other really well depending on what you want to do. Like our producer was saying, graphics, things like that, they're really good at, and you can merge that into the use of Premiere Pro.
So Premiere Pro has many more benefits than just graphics, because Premiere Pro utilizes Audition, which is another Adobe product. So if you really want to master your sound quality, you can play with it in Audition and then import it into Premiere Pro.
Okay.
If you want to get into graphics and animated objects and whatnot, that's After Effects. Again, another Adobe product. Another product you can get with the Creative Cloud from Adobe. And on top of that, you have so many other programs. I mean, there's Adobe Bridge, there's Adobe Lightroom, there's so many things that you can utilize within Premiere Pro because it is an Adobe product. But, hold on one second, but Final Cut Pro only really has Motion, which is graphics. You know, it's a great program for graphics, but Motion and Final Cut Pro really only work together. There's really not too much outside of that. Now, can you still get plugins for Final Cut Pro, like little titles and lower thirds and themes and transitions? Oh yeah, they're everywhere.
Cool. How many of those products that are within the Adobe suite do you get via the CC, Creative Cloud?
I think there are different levels that are available.
Okay.
For the $20 a month level, I think you get it all. So you get an Audition, Premiere Pro.
That's not a bad deal. Relatively short term.
Relatively short term, not a bad deal. You know, after 3 years or so, you're going to be paying a lot more.
But I would assume with that setup, you're getting all the updates as you go as well, which would be costing you more money to pay for those updates, right? If you're getting updated versions.
Well, Final Cut Pro has updates that don't cost money, but yes, you are getting updated programs. You are getting, you know, the best of the best at the best time with the Creative Cloud. Yeah.
Cool.
Now there is one more program. If this person is interested in broadcast television, like your nightly news, your local NPR, whatever. Normally those people use Avid, which is a different program for editing. It's a broadcast standard. I personally don't like Avid because I've never spent any time on it. I just don't know it. I'm a Final Cut Pro guy.
Right.
A lot of people do use Adobe Premiere Pro. You have some amazing color grading options with that. For me, just learning iMovie and then learning Final Cut Pro was an easy ascension from iMovie. And
so,
iMovie is something you can use on your iPad or iPhone. So
cool. So did that happen just sort of as you evolved with your use of Apple products?
Yes.
You kind of, I mean, for example, I take my son, he likes Apple. I would see him kind of just merging into the Final Cut Pro world just because he likes Apple.
Well, and there's a lot of little,
yes,
and there's a lot of little nuances too that you're already familiar with Apple that coexist with Final Cut Pro. So even the way you use your mouse, your trackpad, it makes a pretty big difference.
That's true in terms of efficiency and getting that minute per hour kind of formula that you mentioned or ratio that you mentioned. Can you use Premiere Pro on an Apple product?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
You can?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. It's just, Now, one thing I wish we could do like a test, time by time. If you were to render a 4-minute video on Final Cut Pro and render a 4-minute video of the exact same project timeline, which would be faster? That would be the true comparison.
Just from a rendering perspective,
Yeah,
like
because
a processing
do you know how much
perspective?
time we spend rendering? Like, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, and even if you're using an older computer and you're trying to render or make changes to your timeline in Final Cut Pro because it's 4K and your machine's probably not made for it, you're letting it render between every single change you make. So render time could be deadly depending on the type of equipment you have.
You're not going to do that very long before you're out buying a new computer.
True.
You're going to drive yourself nuts. So what about the other way? Does Final Cut Pro have a version for Windows?
I do not believe so. I don't know.
Never heard of that.
I've never heard of that, yeah.
So probably not.
No.
I mean, it's
honestly, you know what I tell people when they're like, I edit video on Windows.
Oh boy,
I'm
here
like-
we go.
I'm like,
Here we go.
sucks to suck. No, I just say that because like I've edited on both, and yeah, you can get a super fast, wicked, crazy fast computer that you can build with Windows. But the reliability that you have with Apple was one of the main decisions why I went over to Apple to edit, because Windows just has so many little bugs and glitches and everything that something can interrupt your entire video making procedure, and that would murder me.
But if theoretically you kept a really, really clean Windows machine that you had built to the specs that you just alluded to, that it's really powerful, really fast, and you didn't use it for gaming and a bunch of other junk, it could be a great machine for this.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, every TV station that I know of is pretty much run off of Windows. So, but they're using Avid, different program.
Okay. Is Avid going to cost a lot more? I mean, is anybody that we're talking to likely to even use that?
It is
realistically?
significantly more. I don't think very many people are going to be using Avid, again, unless they're getting into broadcast television.
Right.
So now Avid in the past used to be like the standard, but it's not anymore. So, and I don't think it has been for like 5, 6, 7 years.
Okay.
So,
Well, so one of the things you mentioned before we started this podcast is that it's actually a little bit difficult to answer, or maybe the thought is it's actually easier to answer because it's a very subjective answer to this question.
yeah, Ford or Dodge?
So just be subjective.
Ford or Dodge.
Ford or Dodge. Yeah, and there are certainly people out there would say, I'd never drive a Dodge and I'd never drive a Ford, which frankly, whatever. I'd drive whichever one's free. Anyways.
That's a good point. Turning the question
doesn't matter
upside
to
down.
Are you saying that Final Cut Pro is the way to go as far as you're concerned?
I'm saying Final Cut Pro is my Ford.
That's and he likes to drive Dodge. No, I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
Like, what did you say?
I'm kidding.
Gosh, I didn't even hear that. I was laughing so hard. Anyway, it is very subjective. Yes, if you're an Apple person, using Final Cut Pro is going to be a lot easier for you. If you're
Sure.
a Windows guy, Adobe Premiere Pro is probably going to be for you. If I were to take 10 people who I know edit video, 4 of them are using Premiere Pro and 6 of them are using Final Cut, just because I hang out with more of a younger, modern, hip,
Be careful.
smart crowd. Just gonna leave it
No
there.
comment.
Just gonna leave it there.
So what about
Ford.
somebody like, let's say Tom has been on Windows machines his whole life. And
Sorry.
we've already mentioned he's mentioned kind of he's getting into this. And would you tell him make the transition now to Apple if he's serious about this? Okay.
Honestly, our producer would tell you no. I would say the opposite to that.
Really?
Because
Fight!
well, no. Final Cut Pro would not work on Windows.
Right,
But I think
yeah,
the
that's not what I'm
question at
asking.
hand is, would he make the change from Windows as a platform to Apple?
Yeah,
right?
would
That's
this be
question?
the time for Tom to do that?
So 3 years ago, I asked myself that same question. And that's why I'm joking about, when he was like, when you said, let's presume that he only worked on Apples. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I really do mean that, because I was hardcore, die-hard Windows fan.
Really?
Yeah.
Probably
Until...
like Dodge back then too, huh?
No comment.
Anyways.
Die-hard Windows guy. I loved what Dell was putting out at the time. And then I got to using Apple. And at first, it was a very difficult transition because you have to learn fundamentals of computing all over again, because
Right.
words are different, vocabulary is a little different, where you find things is different. Here's what I try to tell people after making the transition from Windows to Apple, here's what I say to people very clearly. I've had the same Apple machine for 2.5 years, almost 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been the most powerful computer I've ever had. If it slows down, I just delete the stuff on my desktop. I delete some videos and whatnot, and it runs just as fast on day one. Or excuse me, it'll run just as fast now as it did on day one. Windows, I have found that there are just so many viruses. There's so much crap. The browsing possibilities that you have there just suck, that you don't have protections. And I notice a trend with people who buy Windows is that they get computers a lot more frequently than people who buy Apple. And I'll say myself that I've had computers last longer. They've been more reliable. They've been more efficient.
Yeah.
Did I have a learning curve switching over? Oh, yeah. But guess what? My life is a lot easier now. A lot easier.
And so that's the reason that you made the switch, is you were tired of kind of the slowing down of a Windows machine and how that kind of cycles through that nastiness.
And then the Windows updates were awful, and then something would just cause it to slow down all the time. It never had its peak computing power. Also, again, I would get viruses all the time. All the time.
Okay. So that's kind of your Apple Windows opinion. As far as just the pure power, editing power of these software programs, are they relatively on par?
Oh, yeah. Totally.
So, okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you're going to have a little bit more professional flexibility with Premiere Pro. But Final Cut Pro can do everything for you. Again, I think it's kind of nuanced towards an Apple person. Premiere Pro is definitely going to be more towards Windows or Apple. It will work on both, but it's definitely more of a Windows, I would say, foundation program. It looks like you're running Windows when you're working on Premiere Pro on an Apple.
Gotcha.
So just the fundamentals are different.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I know that there are... Well, anyways, I totally get it. I think our listeners get it.
Yeah, I would also say, back to your system question, would you go from Windows to Apple? One thing that I do not think Windows does very well is media. I don't think Windows does a good job with media.
That's kind of been known for a long time.
Yes.
And that's kind of been a shot against them for quite a while. All right, so very good. I mean, I don't know that... I guess it comes down for Tom what he's been using, if he's an Apple guy or if he's a Windows guy.
And I'm not going to fault anyone if they're a Windows person, because I totally understand that. That is, you understand Windows, you get it, it works for you. But one type of analogy I would mention here is, the baker who all he does is bake for his whole life, but he doesn't own the bakery. He's just one of the bakers. And then 20 years later, the bakery shuts down, and now robots are making our bread, so he can't get a job. I kind of think of like that scenario when you only work with one computing platform. If you were to make the switch to Apple or even to Linux, he's diversifying his repertoire of programs he can use, and he's also kind of expanding his brain and his memory capacity. This is something that was proven in that Freakonomics podcast that I mentioned to you. So I think in the end, as far as the growth of who you are, the person, who you are, the knowledge base, your memory, and how you can literally grow your capabilities mentally, learning another platform is actually very beneficial to you. So,
how much is Final Cut Pro?
$300.
It is $300 because my suggestion to Tom might be try them both for a little while and see which one you kind of resonate with the most. But I don't know, that might be too expensive a proposition.
I used Premiere Pro at UNM for a while, and it drove me crazy. And then I tried Final Cut Pro. It drove me crazy too. But then I had friends who taught me how to use Final Cut Pro. And if you are using Final Cut Pro, we do actually have a webinar where our editor and I have gone over how to edit in Final Cut Pro. It will be reproduced into an actual course this year. But if you want to learn how to use Final Cut Pro, there are webinars available to members, just FYI.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we've been getting questions actually for a webinar in Premiere Pro as well. So we'll have to figure that out sometime.
I'd have to bring on someone who rocks Premiere Pro. Even our producer is shaking his head like, not going to be me.
That's cool. That's cool. They're out there. We'll find somebody because we do have people that use Premiere Pro as well.
Totally.
So we'll find somebody to do that.
And it is very subjective. Going back to the beginning, it is Ford versus Dodge. It is what is your personal preference. And again, if you're using a lot of iProducts and iMovie and whatnot, Final Cut Pro is going to be a very easy step up for you.
Right. Yeah. In that case, it probably is a little bit of a no-brainer.
Yes.
If you're used to those and
Absolutely.
working on Apple. Cool. Tom, thank you for the question. Guys, if you have a question, head over to askdroneu.com and give us your best accent. We love hearing the accents. We haven't heard as many lately. For whatever reason, I don't know why. But
I don't know
bring
why
them
either.
on. We dig them. They're fun.
Definitely got some new Drone U swag coming out too, guys. And tomorrow's big podcast, I recommend you download that or subscribe to the podcast right now because that is going to be the big one this week, talking about 333 versus 107. And we're going to reiterate the differences. But people are asking the question, we've had dozens of them, should I wait for the 107 and not apply for a 333? Should I just wait in general? What should I do? I think it's the wrong question because if you're going into this for business, if you're going into this for commercial purposes, you've got to be thinking beyond the first obstacle. You've got to be thinking about obstacle 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 if you're ever going to be competitive or have the competitive advantage. So we're going to talk about all that and more tomorrow, so be sure to listen in. It's going to be a good one.
Absolutely. Look forward to that.
Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. My name is Paul.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Drone U.
We believe that videos, images, words, and sounds have the absolute power to inform, inspire, and entertain. We are united under the virtues of safety and knowledge. We are a training community of learners and teachers who encourage and energize each other to achieve greatness. We are pilots, videographers, photographers, freelancers, business owners, enthusiasts, experts, and apprentices. We are creators. We are the Drone U.